Hey, let's talk about sovereignty, legitimacy, power, and authority. First, we'll talk about sovereignty in the context of governments or a ruler or a country. So a sovereign state, and by state we mean a country, not like the states in the United States, but a country. So a sovereign state has independent legal authority over a population in a particular territory. I want to talk about four parts of this definition provided by the College Board. The first is independent. Independent means that there's no other country or authority that gives that country authority. So it is independent of anything else. It exists and has authority over itself. An example of that would be the United States. Who says that the United States is a country and can make its own laws and stuff like that? The United Nations? No. England? Not anymore. It's just by itself. There's nobody who gives the United States authority. The United States has authority, period. It's independent of anything else. The next is legal, so independent legal authority. Legal just means that it's documented or understood. In our case, in the United States, it's documented. We have a constitution. Not all countries have a constitution, but it's just understood. So, for example, when we talk about let's say Spain, we all understand Spain is an independent country, that they have independent legal. It's just understood. Even if we didn't see a document, we just all understand it. But Spain may or may not have a constitution. I don't actually know. So they may have a legal document, but even if they don't, we all understand that they are independent. The third is that there has to be a population. A country with no people, they're not a country. It's not a country, and it's not sovereign. So to be sovereign, you have to have something to be sovereign over. You have to have something to rule over. So to be a government, you have to have something to govern over. Or to be a leader, you have to have people to lead. So you have to have people. And then the last is you have to have some defined territory. So in the United States, we wouldn't just say, well, we're the United States and it's wherever we are. So if someone from the United States is visiting, say, Thailand, Thailand isn't the United States. The United States has a specific border. If you go outside of that border, even if you are from the United States, you are no longer in the United States, and then you're no longer subject to those rules and things like that. So that's what sovereignty means. Now, what are some non-examples? So this means things that aren't sovereign, people that aren't sovereign, or governments that aren't sovereign. So what are some non-examples of sovereignty? Teachers, okay? So I do have some authority, but my authority comes from the principal. If I say, oh, everybody in this class fails because I don't like you, the principal would say, no, Mr. Park, that's not going to fly. You're going to have to grade based on something else. But I do have some of the other characters. I have a population, so I have students in my classroom. I have, well, in my case, I don't really have a defined territory because I don't have a physical classroom. But you could think of my Canvas course as my territory. But I don't have that independent authority. Okay, Utah. Utah has a defined border. Utah has a population. Utah even has a constitution, so it has some kind of legal document. However, Utah doesn't have independent authority. So Utah gets its power from the U.S. Constitution and from the U.S. government. So for that reason, Utah is not sovereign. Churches. Churches generally don't have territory. They may own property, but they don't have territory. And they don't have any authority. So I can go to church or not, but the church, whatever the church is, isn't going to be able to punish me or do anything like that because they have no authority over me. No authority over my secular. Now, a church can say, make me not a member or do other things like that, but they don't have any legal authority over me. They only have religious authority, and that's only if I give them that authority. Now, an exception to that is the Vatican. The Vatican actually does have territory. So that's an exception where a church, the Catholic Church, kind of runs the Vatican, and the Vatican is actually a sovereign territory. It's kind of like a country. Parents are not sovereign. So you could say parents have people. They have their children, maybe. Maybe they have a territory if you consider their home their territory. But they don't have independent authority over their children, over the people in their territory. So if they do something that is illegal, they will get put in jail, or children may even be taken away. So parents are not sovereign. Puerto Rico. Is Puerto Rico sovereign? Puerto Rico has a defined territory. Puerto Rico has a government. They have a constitution. Puerto Rico has a population. But are they independent from any other authority? This is kind of a question you have to know Puerto Rico in order to answer it. No, Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. So Puerto Rico's government can pass laws, but if the United States disapproves of those laws, then those laws are not in effect, or that they're not valid. So Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States and therefore is not sovereign. It's not a sovereign country. In fact, Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. A lot of people don't know that, but they are U.S. citizens. And last one, militias. You may be familiar with militias. This is a picture of a Proud Boys. So Proud Boys would be considered a militia, and I think this is one of their leaders. Are they sovereign? Some like to think so, but they're not. They are subject to laws, and Proud Boys is actually a good example. A bunch of the leaders of Proud Boys are now serving time for breaking the law a few years ago when they kind of planned an attack on the Capitol. So those are non-examples of sovereignty. Now let's look at what makes leaders or governments of sovereign countries, what gives them power. Or actually, let's look at some examples of sovereign countries. So the United States is a sovereign country. Like I said, there's no other authority, there's no other country or organization that says that the United States is a country. It exists on its own. It has a defined border, it has people, and it has a legal document that claims its authority. China is a sovereign country. So just like the U.S., there's no organization or bigger country that says, oh, sure enough, China's a country. Mexico is also sovereign. And we could go through there a whole bunch of countries. All of those countries are sovereign, or should be sovereign. There are some cases where sovereign countries do things and then other countries invade them, Ukraine being a good example of that. But generally speaking, countries are sovereign. Okay, so how do countries maintain sovereignty? They maintain it through power, authority, and legitimacy. And we're going to talk about each of those. So what is power? Power is like physical power. It's the ability to force people in that defined territory to do things. And that could be actual force or the threat of force. So in Utah is not sovereign, but one example of power that a state has or that a country has would be highway patrol. The highway patrol enforces rules. So if you choose to speed or if you choose to transport drugs, you will be subject to the enforcement of laws by the highway patrol. The military is another good example of power that a country has, or that a government has, or that a leader has in order to coerce the people within the territory to do what they're supposed to do. Authority, this one's a little technical, but authority means that the leader or the government has the right to power. And the ways that leaders or governments get this right is usually through written constitutions. So in the United States, the president has authority because in the Constitution it says the president has authority. In other countries, maybe it's a particular religion has kind of some influence over the country, and or maybe in older in the old days, in times past, a king might get his authority from the local religion. And then the other is just tradition. So maybe in a region, in the old days usually, a particular king might get his authority because he comes from a royal family, and it's just tradition that authority is passed down through that family. So those are sources of authority. And generally in modern days, the source is going to be some kind of constitution or written legal document that explains how a government is supposed to work in a particular country. So most modern countries, the authority is going to come from a constitution or something like that. Okay, and the last source of power for a sovereign country, or for the government of a sovereign country, is legitimacy. So legitimacy is when people believe that the government has the right to use power the way they are using it. So you have power. So you have military power, police. So you have power. You have authority, and that usually comes from a constitution. And then you have legitimacy. Legitimacy is just whether or not people believe the government or the leader actually has the right to that power and the right to that authority. And legitimacy comes through several things. One is elections. So when someone is elected, they are in a country that uses elections. That gives that person legitimacy. They can say, 60% of the people elected me. That makes me a legitimate leader because people support me. People approve of me. Another source of legitimacy is performance. So when a leader or when a government is doing well, that gives them a sense of legitimacy. People will think that they are legitimate because the country is being run well. It's economically successful. It's defending its borders. It's people are generally happy and prosperous. That's going to give the government or the leader authority. People are going to approve of them if things are going well. Another source of legitimacy is rituals. So this is becoming more rare, but in this, here's a picture of coronation of a king, King of England in this case, and he is being anointed or made king by the religious leaders, by the local religious leaders, and that ritual creates a sense of legitimacy. Even in our country, we do have some rituals. So we have the swearing in of a president. That swearing in becomes a source of legitimacy. And in fact, that was a big source of contention in the most recent election. Was we have this ritual where a president is, where the election is kind of approved by Congress. And in the past, that's always just been a ritual. Nobody really thinks twice about it. Specifically, the vice president kind of authorizing the election or verifying that the election is accurate. That's just been a ritual. But in the last election, that was questioned. Could the vice president actually say, "Oh, these numbers aren't accurate," and that ritual not happening or being done in a different way made people question the legitimacy, or could have made people question the legitimacy of the current president. And then the last is ideology, and that is just that a leader or a government has legitimacy because people believe in that kind of government. They just believe in it. So an example of that is in America, we believe in democracy. We believe in the rule of law. We have this ideology so that when an election happens, we value that. That's part of who we are, electing leaders. And so our leaders get legitimacy because of our ideology. If we didn't value democracy, if we didn't value voting, then nobody would care whether a political candidate got the majority of votes or whether people voted at all. But people believing in the system, that's what ideology is. It's that you believe in the system, whether the system is religious or democratic or an oligarch, or whether it's whatever the system is. When people believe in it, that would be an ideology. So a sovereign state, now you understand, is a state that has independent authority over a population with a defined territory. And they hold on to that sovereignty through power, so military power, police power, through authority, so some document that gives them authority, constitution or something like that, and through legitimacy, the idea that people believe that ruler actually has the power. And that's it.